watching from. And also let me know if you have any questions about our topic today. So we're chatting about powerful habits to overcome failure or a fear of failure. So we're talking a lot about failure. So tell me if you have any questions about it, and also if you have any stories to share with me, some examples that maybe you're dealing with right now, and we can chat through those. So failure happens to everyone, right? I mean, regardless of who you are, failure happens to everyone. Famous people, rich people, poor people, people all over the world, regardless of what country they're in. Failure happens to everyone. And the one thing to remember is that there is no success without failure, because things happen in contrast. So if we didn't have failure, we wouldn't understand success, because it wouldn't be, there wouldn't be anything to relate back to. So you cannot have success without failure. Now, failure is, like I said, so it happens to everybody, and you've probably had failures that have happened to you in the past, or things that you've seen as failures that have happened to you in the past. And what often happens is that we then take those failures and we move them into our future, into our present, and we say, oh, I'm fearful of failure because of what's happened in the past. So we need to get better at overcoming failure, future failure that may happen, and how we deal with that. And in that way, we're also then able to overcome a fear of failure. So we know what to, how to deal with it in the future, and also knowing that if we can deal with it, then it's not so fearful, it's not so bad, and it's not so terrible. We can handle it. Hey, Yanela, glad that you're watching from South Africa. And failure and this fear of failure can show up in a number of ways, and these are really detrimental to our growth and to our success. So it can show up in things like procrastination, self-sabotage, where you make up excuses about why you can't do something. It shows up in not completing projects, or finishing goals, or going after goals to completion. It shows up in anxiety, if you deal with anxiety, even, low self-confidence and self-doubt. Fear of failure can show up in those ways. So we really want to, get a handle on this fear of failure, and also get braver and get stronger at dealing with failure and overcoming failure. Now, I'll share an example with you. I've recently launched my group coaching program. It's called the Intentional Life Strategy for Success group coaching program. And I had a goal. I had a good, better, best goal. I knew, like, if I had good, I would get X amount of people in the program. Had a better and a best goal for the program too. And I put so much effort and energy into it. I enlisted the help of a coach, and I went through the whole process. I did it. I prepared. I was fully in it. I was so positive, and I was showing up every single day. And yet, I didn't achieve my goal. I didn't achieve it. And I'm here telling you now, I'm very open and honest with this kind of stuff. I'm telling you that I did not achieve that goal that I set for myself. I didn't even achieve the good goal. But that doesn't make me not successful. And there is something that is there for me to learn through that failure, so to speak. I don't really like to call it failure, because it sounds so final, and I don't believe that failure is final. And also there's this negative connotation around failure. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. But I just want you to know that I've experienced it too, and I experience it daily, or, weekly, monthly. It's not as though, if you're doing all the right things, that you're not going to experience failure. It will happen to everybody. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to feel the feelings and have a good cry, because that's what you're going to do when something happens, when you had this expectation, and you've gone after a goal and you've put your all into it, and then it doesn't happen as expected. Well, it's okay to have the feelings. It's okay to feel a bit sad or frustrated or confused or, a little bit shamed or whatever that feeling is. It's okay to have a cry. It really is okay to do those things. What's not okay is to ignore those feelings. And what's not okay is to resist those feelings because they're going to keep coming up for you and they're going to keep creating more fear of failure. So rather just have a good cry and do what you need to do to process the feelings. And the thing that I like to do is I like to ask myself, what am I feeling? And I like to just name off all of the feelings that I'm feeling. I'm not talking about the thoughts. I'm not saying, what am I thinking? I'm saying, what am I feeling? And I just say, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling shameful. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling alone. I'll just list them all off and then I'll say to myself, okay, well, those are just feelings and you can handle these feelings and it's okay to feel these feelings. And then what's going to be the next step is to own the failure, is to take full and complete ownership of that failure. So that's number 2. And just before I move on to number 2, when you're feeling these feelings, it's absolutely okay to feel those feelings when something hasn't gone the way that you've expected it to. It's really normal, but it's important to just realize that you don't want to get to a point where you're wallowing in self-pity for a long period of time. So allow yourself the space to feel, and then start to move forward and start to move forward into the next steps. And the next steps are these. Number 2, own the failure. So take ownership of that failure. It's all very well to blame other things, circumstances, or blame other people for failure, but that's actually not going to serve you at all. It really isn't, because what you do is when you blame something else, you give away responsibility for what it is that you want to achieve. You give away the responsibility to them. And then you have no ownership and you have no power. And what I mean by that is, say, for instance, you are you're training to do a half marathon. And you go and you sign up for a race. And then on the day you do the race, but halfway through, your shoes break and you can't carry on with the race. Okay, so it's easy to say, I'm blaming my shoes for the race, and I didn't actually finish the race. But that means that your shoes were the only thing that was going to allow you to actually achieve that race. And actually, that's not true. The truth is that you are, like 90% in control of achieving your goal. There is 10% out there that sometimes hinders you from achieving your goal, but you are probably about 90% in control of achieving that specific goal. And yes, the shoes may have broken, but that's okay. Take ownership and say, okay, what could I have done to ensure that this didn't happen? What could I have done? What can I learn from this situation? And maybe what I need to learn is that I need to check my shoes before I go running a long race, or maybe I need to get new shoes, or whatever the case may be. You can't blame it on something else. The other reason why you should take ownership of your failure is so that you can learn something from it. Because if you're going to blame someone else or something else that happened, then you're not going to find a way, you're not going to find the learning that can come out from that failure. And that is the most important part of all failure, is what you can learn from it. So own the failure. And by owning that failure, you increase that opportunity for learning from it. The next thing that's important to know is that very often failure results from a lack of preparation. So just from a little simple lack of preparation. It does occur because of many different reasons, but very often it's from a lack of preparation. So I always speak about planning and how important it is. And yeah, it's also really important when you go towards a project or start working towards a project or a goal, is to understand, okay, what is the preparation that I need to do in order to achieve this specific goal or project. The next step is to realize that you only fail when you quit. And that is why I say that failure is such an end final word. And it's not about failure, because failure isn't final. You only fail when you quit. Maybe the failure means that there's something else that you can try, something new that you can, try and do. Like J.K. Rowling, when she first wrote the Harry Potter books and she wanted to get it published, she went to 23 different publishing houses, and they all rejected her. All of them. One of them said, "Don't give up your day job." So she could have gone to 1, 2, or 3, and then said to herself, "Okay, and this is a failure. Maybe I shouldn't be a writer," and that's it. That you only fail when you quit. So if it's something that you believe strongly in, if it's something that you really want to achieve in your life, if it's something that is part of your vision for your future, then don't quit. Keep going, and understand that it is not a failure. It's just a little lesson, and maybe there's a different way to try, something else to do, a new thing that you can take from it. And always remember to ask yourself, what can I learn? Because you're owning this failure, what can I learn from this situation? The other thing to remember is, if you do encounter failure, is never quit on a bad day. So if you are having a bad day with something, don't quit. Wait until there's a good day and then decide if it's something that isn't aligned to the vision for your future anymore. And then you can take it from there. But don't ever quit something. Don't ever stop going after your dream on a bad day or after a bad day. The next thing to do is number 4, is to really get a very clear definition of success. And what I mean by that is, we're fearing failure, and failure is happening, and failure will continue to happen in our life. But that doesn't mean that you're not successful. And it's important to remind yourself that when you're going through a failure, that you are still successful, regardless of what's happened, regardless of this failure that's happened in your life. So remind yourself, what makes you successful? What is your definition of success? Because also remember that sometimes achieving goals is actually not what life's about. What life's about is about consistent action towards your future vision for yourself. And it's about learning, and it's about growing, and it's about improving every single day. That's what life's about. And if we're going after goals, you can be sure that there's going to be failure. But it's not about the goal, it's about the learning and the process and the improvement. So just because you fail doesn't mean that you're not successful. So get a very clear definition of success. And what I mean by this is, I know I am successful because I am a great mom. I know I'm successful because I honor my commitments to myself every day. I know I'm successful because I'm happy. I'm successful because I love my family. I'm successful because I enjoy my life and I enjoy the activities that I do every single day. I am successful because I have failed. And that is my definition of success. Those are some of the things that I define as success. So for yourself, get clear on what success is, so that when you do fail, that you remind yourself, this is just a minor setback. I am still successful regardless of what's happened. The next thing to do is number 5, so you've created this definition of success, but the next thing to do is to also create a new meaning of failure. So what does failure actually mean? And what I mean by that is, like I mentioned earlier, you cannot have success without failure. And on the path to success, or successful goals, reaching successful goals, you are going to have points of failure along the way. That's without a doubt. So what does failure actually mean? So to me, it means that you're learning. You are learning by failing. That's what's happening. And if you've ever done weight training, you'll know that very often they'll give you like a prescribed activity where they'll say, do the bicep curls to failure. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but that often happens. So do the bicep curls to failure, or do the leg squats to failure. And what that means is you've got to do those repetitions until the point where you cannot do it anymore. And it's incredibly sore and you're shaking, and then you just fall flat. It's pretty much like what happens after failure, really. But what they're saying, and the reason why this is so important, is because by doing something to failure means that you encourage growing. And this happens biologically in your muscles just by the fact that if you do something to failure to a point where it's incredibly hard and you cannot do any more, it creates a little tear in your muscles. Did you know this? It creates a tear in your muscle, and then new muscle tissue will come and grow over that tear, and that muscle tissue will be stronger. And that is how your muscles grow. And that is why people do bicep curls to failure, because they want their biceps to grow. It's the same with failure. If you are able to do something to a point of failure, you're just going to get stronger. And that's what failure is. Failure is there for us to learn. So create a new definition of failure for yourself and remind yourself that failure isn't bad. It's actually there for me to learn. As long as I am learning, as long as I'm not blaming other people, as long as I'm taking ownership and knowing that there's something that I can learn here and there's something that I can change. There you go. Create a new meaning of failure for yourself. The next thing to try is called fear setting. And it's a concept by Tim Ferriss. And it's a really great activity. So what he suggests is that we can, before we embark on a new project or a new goal, we can understand what is it that we're fearing. Okay, maybe we are fearing that let's just think of an example. Maybe we fear that we're going to launch a business and there'll be no customers. Okay, so get a definition of what that failure is for yourself, and then ask yourself some questions and do some fear setting. So future envision the possible outcomes, the worst possible outcomes that can happen if that happens to you. So the first thing to ask is, what are the worst things that could happen? And list them all off. So you launch a business and you don't get any customers. What are the worst things that can happen? Write them all down. The next step is, how could you prevent each of those things from happening? So you've got that list, and then write down, how can I prevent each of those things from happening? And then you're going to ask yourself, if the worst happens, so even if you can't prevent those things from happening and the worst happens, how can you fix it? So is there a solution to fix it? And it's this innovative thinking before you've launched that actually makes you more prepared so that there's less likely chance of failing. But it also makes you realize that you can handle these things. If that happens, you can actually handle it. What you might discover when you go through this process is that maybe the task that you're going after isn't something that you should be going after. So that's absolutely fine too. It's not going to say that you should go after every single thing in your life, every single goal or opportunity. But for those things that you're just fearing and you're procrastinating over because it's just, something that you keep thinking you will fail, do this process, because if you understand all of the things that could happen, if you understand how you could prevent those things and also understand if there's a way to fix it, then you'll have a solution already before you even got to the point of failure. And then you're going to ask yourself, if you are successful, what will you achieve? If this becomes successful, so if you launch that business and you do get customers and you do hit your goal, what is the benefit to you by doing it? And that's just to remind you why you need to go after this tough and brave goal or opportunity for yourself. And then you're going to list the costs of your inaction. So what is it going to cost you if you don't take this action? What is it going to cost you if you don't launch your business? Maybe you're currently in a job, and maybe the cost of that inaction is that you're going to be in a job that you don't enjoy. Maybe the cost is that you're going to never achieve the dream that you have to have a flexible lifestyle for your family and yourself. So what are the costs of that inaction? This is a really great process, this fear setting process. And Tim Ferriss actually uses it I think he says he uses it every single month. So he looks at what are the things that he's fearing right now, and he goes through this process with those things. So ask yourself, what is it that you fear right now? Maybe it's a decision that you have to make. Maybe it's something that you want to launch. Maybe it's something that you want to start doing. What is it that you're fearing? And then continue this process and actually plot it out. And what's the worst that can happen? And it's also by visualizing those things that you also start to realize that you can handle this if it does fail. You can move forward from it. And then maybe you won't start to fear failure as much. So I want to leave you with this quote by Winston Churchill. And he says, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And that's what I also, mentioned earlier, is that it's not about the goal. It's not about the success, that end point, because when we get to reaching a goal, we're going to have another one and another one and another one, and we're going to keep wanting to grow ourselves more. So it's not about that end result. We're never going to get to an end result and then say, okay, now I'm happy, now I can relax. That's not how life works. This is a process. And if we see it as a process, and if we see it as a learning opportunity, as a learning journey, then it's much more fulfilling. And we'll realize that, yes, success is not final. We're going to keep going after more goals. And also, failure is not fatal. We can handle this. And it's about the courage to continue. It's about just having the courage every single day to continue. But here are, like I mentioned, some things that you can try. And I'll just briefly go over them again. So the first thing is to feel the feelings and have a good cry. I do that. I love having a good cry. Number 2 is own the failure. Make sure that you're taking full ownership of your failures and take back responsibility for your failures. Number 3 is you only fail when you quit. So don't quit if you don't want to fail. Keep going. Find a different way. Number 4 is to get clear on your definition of success. Number 5 is to create a new meaning of failure and understand that failure is about growth. And then number 6 is to try fear setting. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about failure and also your stories. It would be great to know, if there's anything that you're fearing of doing right now, and maybe we can chat about that. And also, if you have enjoyed this video, then please share it with your friends. Either invite people to the Intentional Women Facebook group or share the video from our Facebook page. You won't be able to share it from the group, so share this video from my Therese Reichenberg Strategy Coach Facebook page. And I will see you again next Wednesday. Have an amazing week.